Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. You have been taught since childhood that real love bites, that intensity equals truth, that devotion is measured in bruises nobody sees. Yet what if every cherished idea you carry about romance is counterfeit? A carefully polished mirror that hides the cracks beneath, and every grand love story is merely an echo of ancient fear disguised in poetic clothing. Your heartbeat booming in your ears, the heat that floods your veins when their name appears on a lit screen, the hollow ache that swallows your stomach when the notification never arrives. These sensations feel sacred, but they are not love. They are survival alarms triggered by old injuries you never treated. The very body you inhabit conspires to persuade you that chemistry is destiny, reinforcing a tale in which passion must wound to prove it is real. And so you trust the tremor because smooth waters feel like apathy, yet the tremor is simply your nervous system remembering crisis. Carl Jung stared straight into this cavern and labeled its stalactites projection, the psychic sleight of hand by which we fling our unfinished business onto the nearest willing screen and call the picture heaven. Where genuine affection reigns, he insisted, there is no hunger for domination, yet most unions are forged on the anvil of necessity rather than on the platform of selfhood. We cling, not because we are overcome by devotion, but because we are frightened to witness ourselves unaccompanied, to examine the quiet corridors of the mind without background chatter, to discover whether an echo responds when we shout our own name. We outsource the heavy lifting of worth to lovers, the way children haul backpacks to parents, demanding someone else carry what feels impossible to shoulder alone. The tragedy deepens because the tighter our grasp becomes, the more oxygen disappears from the container we share, and the flame we purport to protect gutters under our own palms. We confuse frenzy with closeness, spikes of jealousy with depth, whiplash highs and lows with epic romance, and every pop song on the radio confirms the myth by exalting agony as proof of sincerity. In reality, authentic connection enlarges rather than shrinks, expands instead of starves, and invites both parties to stand taller, not fold smaller. What we laud as passion is often possession. The restless phantom of every lesson that taught us love must cost us blood, or it is worthless currency. Jung's vocabulary of the soul warns that the beloved we worship is frequently a hologram stitched from fragments of our neglected selves, a collage promising completion without ever once requesting the impossible task of becoming whole for us. No human being can fill a chasm that was never carved by their absence, for the gorge predated their arrival. It was dug by childhood silences, ancestral grief, cultural scripts telling us that emptiness is fatal and independence is arrogance. We were sold the fantasy that longing itself is evidence of devotion, that the ache is a love song instead of a withdrawal symptom. And so we surrender our autonomy to the fever with the same zeal an addict surrenders to a needle. Real partnership does not arrive in whispers of, "Don't leave or I will vanish." It stands in full daylight declaring, "I am entire, and because I am entire, I choose you freely." To reach that plateau, we must trek through the desert we avoided, confront the echoing chamber inside the chest, where abandoned feelings huddle, and reclaim responsibility for nourishing them. What you call romance, that relentless beast thudding behind your ribs, is attachment stripped to its rawest impulse, the primal directive to tether before the night predators arrive, and it does not nurture, it devours. Jung saw the shadow crouching behind every desperate text, each gift delivered like a ransom payment rather than a blessing, every whispered, "I miss you," that translates to, "Reassure me I exist." We imagine we cradle a lover, yet often we clutch a mirror, terrified to drop it lest the image disintegrate and force us to face the vacant background. Detachment, therefore, feels like a funeral, because somewhere along the path we handed over our identity for safekeeping and misplaced the claim ticket. Projection lets our abandonment wounds masquerade as their aloofness, Our self-doubt masquerade as their neglect. Our insecurities masquerade as their failure to adore properly. But the blade cuts inward. No one is truly deserting us. We have deserted ourselves every time we begged their attention instead of animated our own heartbeat. The most vicious sorcery of attachment is its power to make the prison resemble a palace, to persuade us that anxiety is intimacy and self-erasure is the admission fee to the kingdom of belonging. Naming the shadow is the first strike of daylight. Hunger wearing love's attire is not sacred. It is a counterfeit placeholder screaming for the deeper labor of turning inward. The knot does not untangle when we yank harder on its ends, but when we loosen, breathe, and allow the strands to reveal their separate origins. Love, in its unmasked form, always feels like a homecoming, first to ourselves, then to another, never a hostage exchange. There is inside you a cavernous hush, an echo chamber you have filled with talk shows, busy schedules, scrolling thumbs, and overlapping conversation because the silence roars too loudly. Yet the void is neither punishment nor proof of defect. It is the most sincere terrain in your interior landscape, containing every emotion you refused, every truth you postponed, every facet you disowned to soothe someone else's discomfort. That pocket of nothingness cannot be plastered with someone else's presence because it was built to be illuminated by your own. Running from that emptiness grants it sovereignty. You believe you chase love, but often you chase anesthesia, a momentary numbing of the primal fear that solitude might expose a hollowness too awful to survive. Losing the distraction therefore mimics freefall. Suddenly the stage lights dim, the applause dies, and the quieter question echoes, "Who are you when there is no audience?" And that question chills more than any farewell could. The void never lies. While lovers and friends may reflect curated versions of your face, the emptiness strips every costume. It does not scold. It waits patiently, humming beneath conversations, reverberating through kisses, reverent in stillness. Every relationship that flares and fizzles is another detour around that waiting place, and the void will continue to pulse under floorboards until you brave the journey inward. Detachment, when honestly attempted, triggers biological rebellion. Your brain begs for another hit of their voice, a flash of their photograph, any crumb of dopamine to hush the clanging alarm of absence. But this is not heartbreak. It is detox. The neurochemicals of attachment have marinated your synapses so thoroughly that sobriety resembles catastrophe. Yet the agony is medicine. Every resisted craving rewiring circuitry, every tear shed without dialing their number, diluting the authority you ceded. Jung called this phase the night sea journey, an ordeal where familiar maps dissolve, crutches splinter, and the self is left naked on dark water under a starless sky. In that watery passage, memory distorts, the past bloats with retrospective tenderness, the phone becomes an oracle at 2 a.m. Bargaining feels like logic, but these storms mark progress, not regression. Transformation, unlike addiction, demands discomfort. It forges new tissue by burning off the infected. Across countless dawns, the ache will gradually shift. One ordinary morning you will discover your first waking thought is not a person, but a breath, and you will marvel at the stillness where panic once shrieked. The chains were never iron around your heart. They were fog around your perception. True alchemy begins not the moment you no longer miss them, but the moment you trust yourself to survive missing. Detox does not require you to stop loving. It requires you to start choosing with clarity, to pick sanity over nostalgia, wholeness over scraps, moment after moment, until the reflex to self-abandon dries up like a riverbed in summer. Your worth, previously negotiable and contingent upon outside signatures, becomes wild, untamed, non-transferable, and the hunger that once seemed synonymous with passion quiets into a grounded hum. Eventually the tempest ends without trumpet fanfare. You catch yourself laughing freely and note, almost as an afterthought, that no ghost rises to overshadow the joy. Freedom is rarely cinematic. It is subtle, a return to internal space vast enough to echo, and Jung named this individuation, the slow unfurling of a self so rooted it can meet another self as an equal, not as a lifeline. Looking back, you neither vilify nor idolize the former you who knelt for love. You bow respectfully to the path that scorched illusions, so your core could finally gleam. Detachment does not leave a hole, it leaves a horizon. Relationships once worn like straitjackets begin to itch. Some companions drift because your absence of need confuses their old dance steps. Let them drift. Those meant to stay will greet you in this uncluttered field where love is bestowed, not bartered. Silence no longer haunts because you have become fluent in its language. You will offer love again, but from solid ground, less a burning sacrifice, more an open-palmed flame. Want will replace need, presence will supplant possession, and this shift is the quiet revolution. The discovery that the treasure you scoured others to find had merely been buried under your own forgotten name. The real test unfolds afterward, when societal noise urges you to hurry along, pair off, return to the known script. Freedom, you learn, is not a terminal checkpoint. It is a practice, a daily recommitment to refuse the confusion of loneliness with lack, to respect solitude as fertile soil rather than barren wasteland. Jung warned that embracing oneself entirely is the most frightening feat because scapegoats evaporate and excuses die. Yet that embrace is the birthplace of purposeful living. There will be days the echo of attachment masquerades as present desire, tempting you to resurrect the old mirror. And you must remember that longing which demanded self-abandonment was not love, but a crucible, a teacher dressed in flame. The lesson is concluded. You are free to step onto new ground. Now begins the constructive labor, rebuilding inner architecture, gazing into reflective surfaces and seeing a face you recognize, cultivating relationships where choosing does not require shrinking, where abundance does not demand bleeding. The reckoning is not a conclusion, but sunrise over uncharted land, and the question is no longer whether you can survive without them. You have already proven resilience. The question is, now that you walk unshackled, whom will you choose to become?